the Jewish kingdom of Kush. The Sudan is located in northeastern Africa. The modern country of Sudan is home of the Kushite civilization, also known as ancient Nubia. Kush was also referred to as Ethiopia in ancient sources and as Nubia in medieval times. For a long time, scholars confused ancient Ethiopia with the modern-day country of Ethiopia. In fact, Ethiopia in ancient sources referred to Kush, which is located in what is today Sudan. The area of the modern country of Ethiopia was rather referred to as Aksum in ancient times and also as Abyssinia. Kush developed along the Nile in Sudan and is one of the oldest civilizations in the world. The start of civilization in Sudan can be dated to the 3rd or 2nd millennium BC, when a hierarchical and a sophisticated metal-making culture emerged in the area of Kerma. In the 8th century BC, the Kushite Empire stretched from central Sudan to the Levant. The known number of Kushite pyramids is 230, more than double the number of Egypt's pyramids, though smaller in size. The pyramids of Kush are noted for their architectural creativity and for their architectural diversity. An ancient community of Jewish faith known as the Beta Israel settled in the region north of Lake Tana until contemporary times. The Beta Israel are identified in a wide range of historical traditions with the Israelite tribe of Dan. Historical sources and traditions also identify the origins of the Beta Israel with Kush. In that day, the Lord will reach out his hand a second time to reclaim the remnant that is left of his people from Assyria, from Lower Egypt, from Upper Egypt, from Kush. Isaiah 11:11. I will record Rahab and Babylon among those who acknowledge me, Philistia too, and Tyre, along with Kush, and will say, this one was born in Zion. Psalm 87:4. Writing about the Beta Israel, the once chief rabbi of Egypt, David Zimra, states, those Jews that come from the land of Kush are without doubt from the tribe of Dan. Historical sources speak of a Jewish independent state that ruled in Kush, starting from an unknown date to the 9th or 10th century. 9th century scholar Eldad Haddani, who is assumed to be from the Beta Israel, identified himself as a citizen of this Jewish state or kingdom in Kush. In alignment with Beta Israel traditions, Eldad identified himself as being from the Israelite tribe of Dan. Eldad locates his Jewish state on the other side of the river of Kush, or the Nile, similar to the location referenced in biblical passages in context of a diaspora Jewish community. In his writings, Eldad traces the migration path of his ancient Danite ancestors who left the Holy Land during the struggle between the kingdoms of Israel and Judea. Eldad states that his tribe of Dan passed through Egypt before settling in Kush. Quote, all the Egyptians stood on their watch until we had passed through their land, and reached the land of Kush, which we found to be a good fertile land, having fields, vineyards, gardens, and parks. The inhabitants of Kush did not prevent the children of Dan from dwelling with them, for we took the land by force. Eldad's description of his land as having parks and vineyards points to the Butana region east of Meroe and west of Oxum in eastern Sudan. Unlike the rugged high terrain of Oxum, the fertile Butana region has a flat topography, which makes the region ideal for farming. In about 270 BC, the Kushites established Meroe as the capital of their kingdom. The Kushites developed a rich agriculture of wheat, barley, and fruits in the fertile Butana region. Large numbers of wine storage pottery and wine tendrils were uncovered by archaeologists in Meroe. Historian Heracles writes, an important branch of agriculture, meaning in the kingdom of Meroe, was the cultivation of fruit in orchards and grapes in vineyards. Many of these belonged to temples. By the time Christianity became the dominant religion in northern Sudan in the 6th century, the Kushite kingdom was divided into two states, Makuria and Alwa. In the 9th or 10th century, a powerful Jewish queen named Judith, coming from probably eastern Sudan, ruled Oxum. Evidence of Queen Judith as being the ruler of perhaps the same independent Jewish state in Kush mentioned by Eldad, and as being part of the same Jewish population in Kush mentioned in the Bible, has not been studied by scholars so far. Queen Judith, known for her charismatic persona, ruled Oxum with an iron fist. James Bruce describes the queen as a woman of great beauty and talents for intrigue. An Egyptian document documenting events that took place in the 10th or 11th century states the king of Al-Habash, here meaning Oxum, sent to the king of Nubia a youth whose name was Girgis, and mentioned that a woman, a queen of Bani al-Hamawiyah, had revolted against him and against his country, meaning Oxum. The Oxumite king's mention of the queen to the Nubian king may indicate that Queen Judith was a source of concern for Nubia as well. Late in the 10th century, Arab geographer Ibn Hawqal writes, it is told that Al-Habasha, meaning Oxum, has been ruled by a woman for many years, and she has killed the king of Al-Habasha, who is named Al-Haddani. To this day, she rules with complete independence in her country and the frontier territories of Al-Haddani in the western part of Al-Habasha. Hawqal's account of Queen Judith as ruling her country indicates that the queen came from outside of Oxum. Hawqal's identification of Queen Judith's land with the frontier territories of Al-Haddani and the western part of Oxum seems to suggest that her kingdom was located in Sudan. Later Oxumite kings labeled Judith as a rebel, perhaps only to deny her historical legitimacy as a ruler over Oxum. Or perhaps the label rebel indicates that Judith's kingdom of origin was once a tributary state to Oxum. According to traditions, Judith's reign lasted for 40 years until she died of an accident. The field of Judith in Aksum is a historical area in which ruins of buildings destroyed during Judith's reign are said to have once stood. Judith is said to be buried in a northern village near Wakro. Judith was succeeded by mysterious figures who contributed to the rise of the Zagwe Christian dynasty. In the 9th century, Aksum was weakened and its tributary states, perhaps including that of Queen Judith, broke away. The Aksumite expansion into eastern Sudan goes way back to the 3rd century, when Aksumite kings invaded the Nile Valley and sacked Meroe. Hence, the probability that Judith was the queen of an autonomous Jewish state in Sudan and once a tributary state to Aksum becomes very likely. Traditions among local villagers today provide elaborate accounts on Judith that further asserts her historicity. In the 14th century, Aksumite records cited Jews in specific locations, including Simeon and Wagara. These regions remained home of Beta Israel populations until contemporary times. The Yeha temple, with some Near Eastern architectural traits, is thought to have been a site of Jewish worship. This and more evidence suggest that the presence of Judaism in Aksum goes back to earlier times, possibly suggesting that multiple migration waves of Jewish populations from Kush to Aksum have taken place in history. Cultural studies cited all Beta Israel traditions that affirm origins from the Nile Valley. The diverse evidence that point to the existence of an ancient Jewish state in Kush deserve a more serious consideration by scholars. Although Eastern Sudan proved to be one of the richest historical sites in the world, archaeological efforts there remain minimum. Recently, an Italian excavation was carried near Kassala, on the Sudan-Eritrea border. The area proved to be so rich in history that archaeological findings were on surface and covered wide distances, dating from the 3rd millennium BC to the Islamic era. The sum of historical sources and traditions that point to the existence of a once autonomous Jewish population or state in Kush should be the subject of more serious scholarly work. There have been no archaeological efforts so far to search for the existence of this Jewish state in eastern Sudan, despite all the evidence that point to it and despite the archaeologically rich nature of the region.